Guys, welcome to the Obvious Choice podcast. Today is a little bit different. I am going to be interviewing a guest, Elan, who is a fantastic ADHD coach for entrepreneurs. I am very excited because on the podcast, I have definitely mentioned that I am late diagnosed ADHD. But one of the things that I'm really excited about having Elan here is that although he specializes in helping entrepreneurs who are ADHD, most people struggle with certain ADHD related symptoms some of the times. So even though you may not be ADHD, I think you'll find a lot of the tactics and tricks that we use to help be more productive, more consistent, and have better follow through will still be really helpful. So Elan, thank you so much for coming on and having a chat with us today. We're excited to have you.
No, thanks for having me. Excited to
Yeah.
be here.
So tell me a little bit about what you do and then the big study that you did.
Nice. I like how you call it the big study.
The big study.
And it's true. So for context, I've been an entrepreneur for the past decade, and I during COVID I got a late diagnosis of ADHD, and when I went down the rabbit hole of so I got this diagnosis, but with no manual. So now what do I do? There was very little out there. And so that led me down well, if there's no real roads paved, then I'll go pave these roads, and I will find out what I want to know and what I'm searching for in this hunt. And so that led me down the first study, and I got 30 plus entrepreneurs, close to 40 entrepreneurs in a study, and they were 1 to 2 hours long of interviews, and there were some amazing results that came from that around how helpful diagnosis was for people, or for people to understand and have awareness for themselves, strategies that work. There was so much, countless, that came from the first study. But the biggest piece that came from study one was that, and this will be no surprise to you, but the most resounding thing was around consistency. When I asked the question to people, how likely are you to achieve your goal, your big goals, if you were consistent each week? And 100% of people said 100, but it wasn't just 100% of people said, okay, if I could be consistent each week. It was the resounding emotion behind it. It was like, oh my God, if I did the thing I knew I needed to do each week, I'd be a millionaire by now. Like many years ago, I would have launched this thing. I would have been here. I would have been there. And so that became my obsession and my interest over the last year of coaching entrepreneurs with ADHD was how do we bring the consistency with more ease? Because if you can be consistently hitting what's most important for you to finish each week, then you accumulate those findings over week to week to week, those big wins. And then over the course of the year, you're able to make massive progress towards your goals. So I guess that was like a longer winded story, and there might be a lot of longer winded answers, but
we do.
Right. So the first part was around consistency, but then when I was doing that study, there were only a couple of people in that study, which were like multimillionaire entrepreneurs, serial entrepreneurs, incomes of $1 million and up. And there was a palpable difference between those entrepreneurs and let's call it more earlier stage or lower revenue, or like solopreneur, small team type. And I knew there was a difference. And so then that became, after a year of working and building all these consistency with entrepreneurs, I still was curious, why are some of them succeeding so well, while other, and even with the consistency, and some aren't achieving the success that they want as much. And what are what are more particular differences? And the interesting thing is, everybody's different. There's so many variables in our lifetime. Like Amber, you've had a lifetime of all sorts of experiences that make you wonderfully amazing at some things, and then there's some challenges around others. So identifying what is the difference between the ultra successful with ADHD and those that aren't as successful. What are those differences? And that became my hunt of the study number 2. And that actually is what led, when I connected with John, then he thought, okay, this is great for me and you to connect and talk more deeply about it.
Absolutely. And I think before we dive into some more of the stuff, what might be helpful is for us to just kind of quickly explain ADHD, because there's definitely a lot of like misconceptions. So like, especially when we talk about consistency, right? It's not a lack of skill. It's not a lack of even attention. It's the ability to control the attention, right? So it's not just, I
Yeah,
mean, a lot of us are fidgety by nature, but
right.
for a lot of us, it also may be it's control of our attention and focus to where we want it to go. So is there anything that you would kind of add
Yeah,
to
there's a
explain
lot of
ADHD briefly?
misconceptions because a lot of
Mhm.
people think, okay, ADHD means you can't focus, and
Mhm.
that's not the case. Actually, people with ADHD can hyper focus.
Mhm.
But the question is, what are they hyper focusing on? And is it the
Yes.
thing that's going to help them, or is it something that's going to take them away from their ultimate objective? And that's the constant, lifelong work that people with ADHD go through is recentering themselves, kind of like in meditation. The brain goes elsewhere and then you come back to center. But
Exactly.
how do we do that? And so there's lots of challenges that people with ADHD face, and struggles, common struggles around, feeling like they haven't met their potential, struggles like around managing an organization around finances and money, lost relationships that have come through impulsiveness or different characteristics within the traits of ADHD. But yeah, there's, if we look at the like more classical definition of like how someone gets diagnosed, there's a bunch of characteristics and people get rated on them, and they vary in terms of different questions. But I think, the common perception of someone with ADHD has some more challenges around impulse control, some more challenges around hyperfocus or retaining the focus in what's important for them, emotional regulation. I think that's probably the part that's most not paid attention to. So, for example, if
Right.
someone is procrastinating or doing all these other things, actually at the root of that, if you go to like the body level, the emotional level, there's an emotional regulation challenges around that then it actually feels uncomfortable, like in the body of the person, and they feel urges to jump to other things, because it's actually uncomfortable for them to be where they are in that situation.
And that probably connects to some of the stuff that you found in your study, which hopefully you'll bring up. I'm thinking of the cycle of ambiguity, which
Oh
I
yeah,
think
the cycle of
they
ambiguity was
love.
amazing. Yeah, so for yeah, if you want, do you want to jump into that now?
So let's
We can
lay a
roll.
little bit of groundwork. So for
Yeah,
a lot of our students, for the Online Trainer Academy and for the Online Trainer Mentorship. So quick recap just for you is, we help personal trainers create online businesses. Um, And a lot of the things that they tend to struggle with is consistency. So whether ADHD or not, that is a huge issue across the board that we see. And it could be for things like posting social media content or talking to people on a consistent basis to build those relationships, jumping from one kind of mental program of what they're doing to the next. They deal with a lot of like shiny object syndrome. If it's not working for, within 2 weeks, then it must not be working. Let me jump to the next thing. A lot like our clients do when they're not losing weight or whatever. So there's a lot of overlap with the consistency issue for our people. So I'm actually really hoping that obviously helping our ADHD coaches, because what do you remember, or did you tell me what the stat was like for how many entrepreneurs who tend to be ADHD?
yeah. So okay, there are no real great stats around this, like real studies that I can
Yeah.
say, okay, this is the stat. But I went ahead in Toronto. I went to Collision Conference, um, 2 years ago, and I went ahead and I pulled everyone I could meet. Like literally, that's all I did all day was I walked
Hmm.
around saying, "Hey, I'm doing a study, and I'd like to know, if you're willing to declare if you have ADHD or not." Um, Surprisingly, people answered that question. I think, quite honestly, I think
Yeah.
ADHDers are
We can't
overshares
help it.
by nature, on the average, right? So I think it was relatively just slightly underrepresented. But
Yeah.
yeah, it was one third of people I spoke to, it was like 32.5%,
Yeah.
declared being diagnosed with ADHD. So let's call it one third. Then there was one third that were self identifying as having symptoms and character traits of ADHD. And then 1/3 of people did not identify with it, did not have a diagnosis of it. So now 1/3 of the entrepreneurial population that I've spoken to have it actually as a diagnosis.
Which is nuts.
Yeah, and so if you add that up, it's 1/3 plus 1/3, 2/3 of entrepreneurs, and there could be lots of reasons why they're more drawn to either work for themselves or build their own thing. Whether it's like, they have a harder time working for other people. Having ADHD, it's like there's certain tasks that are really easy to do, but then being told how to do it or doing tasks that you don't want to do then make you not want to perform those. And when you work for a company, you sort of don't have that opportunity to just say no to a bunch of things. So you might drag your feet, and then so you're less employable in some senses for some part of the population. But then
we
it
joke
makes you
on
great.
The podcast that we're the most unemployable bunch.
Yeah. But what's actually interesting,
like nobody could work for anyone else.
What's interesting, right, in the personal fitness and in fitness world, right? You are trying to get your clients to be consistent with working out, and it's not about just like one haymaker of a workout or like one marathon you run, but just like how do you stay consistent with it? So it's actually quite a meta thing, I think, for the trainers to take the context that they understand that they're very good at. They're probably very good at being consistent with either training their clients to be consistent or with themselves to be physically consistent. And then I think it's nice to look at, well, what are the ways that make people consistent? So if we look at personal training, personal or fitness, right? When people find something that they really love, that's physically active, it doesn't feel like work. So for example, someone who loves, I don't know, ultimate frisbee, someone who loves golf, someone who loves basketball, someone who loves hockey, whatever, they can obsess about that, and they can go to that and have lots of fun. And it's not a harder thing for them. But why do people hire personal trainers? Like, right? Like,
tell me what to do.
Just tell me what to do.
And just tell me what to do.
Yeah. So the beauty of personal training is when you hire a personal trainer. So for example, I was in Nicaragua. That's actually where I met John. We were in Nicaragua, and I lived right off on the surf beach. And this was the first time as an adult that I've hired like a personal coach for a physical thing. I've hired like for business training and whatnot. I've hired. But it was amazing. I hired the surf coach. I got like 10 lessons with them over 3 months, and like phenomenal. They told me exactly what I need to do. And every single lesson I had with them, it like unlocked so many more waves that I could catch, so much more that I had no idea that they were pointing out things that I didn't notice I was doing wrong. And then giving me the right cue of what to focus on. And that was so helpful, the like exact what to focus on. So that's where I think, Amber, your program comes in incredibly, because you can tell people exactly where to focus on and what to do. Now the question is, how does someone make it work for them? And for the most part, if people can find ways to hack it in and be fun for them, and there's lots of ways of doing this, that's going to be best. But for example, in the personal training world, when you show up to a personal training session, like people end up working out really well and really hard. And I'm sure they work out harder in front of their personal trainer.
Oh God, yeah.
Right? Like they probably rep out
body
their best.
doubling.
Yeah. So that's where it comes to body doubling. So for people who don't know this term body doubling, it's essentially when you are alongside someone else, whether it's in person or virtual, you are able to maintain your focus on what you're working on for a much longer period of time. It works incredibly well. It even works with people with their kids who maybe don't want to do their homework. If you're just
I do that with cleaning. I
with
call mom
cleaning.
or I make phone calls to like grandma, whoever, like I'll call and clean at the same time. And it's amazing.
Yeah.
So
100%.
So for like content and stuff, like if you're struggling with content, a simple, like you don't have to even talk to each other, like hopping on Zoom, turn off the camera, turn off your mic, just knowing that they're there makes a world of difference, at least for me. And
do you have any co-working in your programs?
We don't. No. The Online Trainer Academy is more of a DIY option.
Yeah.
And the Online Trainer Mentorship is a whole different beast. But there's the Facebook group, and they could certainly organize, their own, but they may not realize that that's something that would be helpful for them.
So that's what I would say is like very easy, because so setting up co-working with other people, for example, if you've got like a Facebook community of like people who all have to do similar types of tasks, is great. You can like put a post in that group, that community, and see who wants to run. Maybe run a co-working session. Maybe you find this particular time every week, Tuesdays at whatever 11 o'clock. We'll meet for an hour and we'll hammer this out. I've run like, I don't know, a couple thousand co-working sessions, even more. It's like thousands now of co-working sessions. And it's amazing. I've seen people get so much done from writing content, doing sales calls, writing. I've seen people write complete books and then edit the book, like basically use the co-working process, the body doubling process. And it's so easy to coordinate, message some friends or post online. There's also lots of online services that are quite cheap. For under $100 a month. You can have access to all sorts of co-working. We have co-working at Deep Work Sprints, but there's lots of different services and different communities that you can join to have access to it. And it's amazing. Like in a span of 2 hours of co-working, body doubling to get content done or sales calls out or messages, like you'll get more out done probably than you will in 2 days of work.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you've got to race against a clock, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you get that like positive anxiety, in it. And for our coaches that do target people who are entrepreneurs or something like that, what a great way to create a community of the type of people that you want to work with. So like you could very easily, for like lead generation, is create a body doubling thing that you do every week and just put it out there and just network and get to meet people that way. Would be a fantastic way to get in front of the type of people that you would want to work with and help you get your own work done.
I wanted to add a few more elements for consistency for the personal trainer, like the person that's building the online fitness business, to find ways to do those with more ease. So I'd say be more honest with yourself of the things that you like to do. So for example, one person might like to do video, another person might like to talk, another person might like to write. I think find the path of least resistance, like the easiest, what's easy for you to begin with. And that's always like, what's easy is always a question I ask people when in coaching. Like, when have you done this with ease? And I think people often overlook the things that they've done with ease. So for example, I really enjoy doing interviews and a video and like stuff like this. So this is the kind of thing that energizes me and I could do all day. So I think for people to find what is the thing that is enjoyable, easy, fun, find more of that. And then secondly, try to stack some sort of habit. Like, I think it's neat. Everyone's got like some sort of workout routine, ritual habit. If they're a trainer, I'm presuming. am I correct in that?
Ish. It's funny because we tend to, I would say, there's a good chunk of personal trainers who are great at that. But I would also say there is a even larger chunk who struggle just as well,
right?
Because they're human.
Yeah.
So especially for people who are ADHD, we don't really build habits the same way typical people would. And just with the prevalence of it, that you see a lot of hyperfocus and I'm off, hyperfocus and I'm off, which you'll see.
It's
quite
like
a
the
bit,
shoe
I would say, in
cobbler
this
that
field.
doesn't their own shoes. Like, what's the
Yeah.
there's some sort of saying about like the shoe.
I know what you're talking about, but I don't
needs
remember.
their
But
own
it
shoes
also
repaired.
it makes them great coaches too, because they understand. If you've never struggled with it, it's hard to coach it without having kind of lived through it sometimes. So they're still fantastic coaches, but they're human. They have periods of struggle too. But what was your
Oh, so
tip?
what I was going to say is try to, okay, so for example, I hate actually producing content, in full transparency. But if this, so I think getting things started. So one thing that really helped me is breaking things into lower levels and removing the stakes, like putting less pressure. So for example, I'm like, okay, producing a video, rather than starting at producing a video or going live on a thing, it was like, okay, I'm going to go on a run. And while I'm running, I always get thoughts and inspiration. And then I'm going to essentially hit record while I'm on a run with a thought. I might stop and walk, I might jog or whatever. And so my first few videos that I recorded, I essentially hit record with no intent of actually posting it. So just dropping the stakes of like, I have to actually post it.
I love that.
And so that just like gets some reps out of the way. But pretty quickly, then it's like, oh, well, I actually start, once you get into it, you start I'm like, oh, I actually enjoy this, or, oh, that piece of content was actually good. So why don't I just post it? So starting something new, remove the stakes and even remove the performance barrier of it. That's like one easy thing. The second thing is I naturally think of ideas when I'm running. That's like a perfect time for me to be processing. I'm thinking about conversations I had in coaching. I have all these thoughts. So then it's a perfect time to, at some point, I'm running on my own and I want to externalize the thoughts. So then I can
100%.
stop to do it. The other thing is, so for example, I hate responding to email, but actually really like a hack I have for myself is I'll do sometimes tabatas, or, some sort of, 40
like
seconds on, but I make the gap of the break a bit longer. And sometimes what I'll do is I'll hop in on a Tabata, whatever, some sort of timed thing. And then in my time off, I'll try to quickly get through my email. Quickly responding to things, because I really have a resistance to getting in there. But then what always happens is once I start getting in there and knocking things off,
it's fine.
Sometimes my then workout gets thrown off a little bit, because then I'm hooked into the responding element. But the point is people do things really differently, and I find it interesting looking at the oddly specific ways that people do things really well. Like when we were in Nicaragua, John came and wrote his book. He wanted to get he's already in Nicaragua. Some would consider that the getaway. But then even within Nicaragua, he's like, hey, I want to get away and spend like a day or two writing this book. So we had an extra bedroom. He came and he stayed there. But after one day, he sort of extended to 2 to 3. And then by the 4th day, it was like, okay, he was ready to go. He'd ridden a lot. But some people might think that's crazy. Like, what, you're going to fly across the world? Oh, and then even though you're already there, then you're going to find another place that is the right environment for you. And I think this is most overlooked, is there are environments that help you succeed immensely. And that's for example, for some people, going to the gym helps them work out really well. For some people, actually, a home gym works out really well. So it's find out what is your location that actually is inspiring you to do your reach outs. For some, I've had people who their best sales or follow-ups, they don't do it in an office. They'll do it while on walks. I have some people where they'll walk and do all their responding to messages while moving. And there's something about that motion that really helps them. That's you?
100%.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So maybe you want to tell us a bit about how you do that.
It's just I have to move in order to think. It's I have to have my hair up in order to think. If I have my hair down, there's just no way. You'll get ditzy version of me. I cannot process information that way. But moving is kind of the same thing. It helps me just process things. And it's almost I know for me, I need to be constantly using 100% of my brain in some capacity. And movement helps fill the gap in some way. So it lets me, the adult in my brain, take control of the situation.
Yeah.
It makes, and I'm so much more eloquent. If I have to sit like this, I'm not usually as eloquent when I speak, but when I'm out on a walk, I sound super smart. It's great. So yeah, movement helps a ton.
So yeah, that's where it's I have, for example, a client that they do all their best sales calls while they're driving. So we'll design 48-hour road trips for him to go collect 50 grand in revenue and then come back.
That's so much fun.
It's not an expectation, but it's that we know that produces results whenever he lines up sales calls while on the road. And there's something about when you're driving or walking or running, there's this autonomic thing that happens that you're using some part of your brain to be in motion, but then that causes an ease for everything else. And there's this feel of we're going somewhere with this. We're going somewhere.
It's energy, right? Yeah. You're pushing energy somewhere. My best thoughts come, I can't record obviously while I'm driving, but that's where my best thoughts come from, is when I'm driving. I have, so I have to record voice notes or something like that. But yeah, there's something about driving and just movement in general,
Mm.
whether it's me moving or something moving me like a car.
Have you ever gone on a labyrinth walk?
That sounds like fun though.
Yeah, okay. So I have a bunch of kinesthetic exercises. Because I'm like you, I'm very kinesthetic. Like I like to be in motion to do my
Mm-hmm.
thinking. And so yeah, like a couple weeks ago, I normally don't do as much in person anymore, but this one client of mine, I wanted to take him on this labyrinth walk because he's like you, very kinesthetic.
Yeah.
So at anyways, near I'm around Toronto. There's labyrinth. So a labyrinth is kind of like a maze, where there's one way that you walk in, and you walk all the way around, and it gets you to the center, and then from the center you walk all the way out. But it's a little bit of a maze, and it's not like a maze that gets you lost, where there's dead ends and stuff like that. It's not like Hunger Games or I don't know, some sort of like complete challenge. But
Make it interesting.
but okay, so here's what's really cool. So this labyrinth walk was something, and don't quote me on the exact history of it, but long time ago, let's call it hundreds of years ago or thousands of years ago, they would use these to go in with a question and essentially get the answers from, let's call it the gods, the source, whatever. Answers would emerge from this walk. And so you'd go in. And so what I love to do is first getting clear on what is a question you want to explore. Like, for example, if someone is, they've got a health business, it might be like, how can I successfully, okay, maybe they're going in with the question of how can I be consistent? How can I successfully be consistent with outreach? How can I be successful with building this online business? Or it's like, what does a successful romantic relationship look like? What does a great life full of health look like? Whatever. Go in with a very targeted question. Do some sort of exercise to ground yourself. I love like sort of like a Wim Hof breathing, because in like 2-3 minutes you're like fully centered, but it doesn't matter. And then you go for this mindful walk through the maze. And as you get, let's quote unquote, lost in the maze, you're essentially exploring the question through the lenses of like who, what, when, where, why, how, to that question. And you keep coming back to the question, your brain goes, you wander and you're going on and off, but you're paying attention to your body in the walk. You're paying attention to your thoughts. You're just being mindful of the whole thing. And when you get to the center, there's this sort of like flower in the center, like petals. And each petal can stand for the who, the what, the when, where, why, how. And you step into each, and it creates a frame for like, okay, now I'm exploring this from the who. Who do I need to be? Who needs to be like, who do I need to be to create this content consistently? Who can help me create this? You know what I mean? You get into the what. What am I doing? The when. When is the best time for me to create this content, etc. Where is the best place for me to do it? Like you might come up with ideas. Oh, it's when I'm on a run. It's when I'm in the gym. It's when whatever. Point is, you get those answers. They come to you quite miraculously, but not surprisingly. And then when you feel like you've got the answers, then you start doing the walkout. And I can tell you how many times I've done these. I do these labyrinth walks myself. Like I try to do them at least once or twice a year. And they have them in a lot of cities, which is great. And no one knows them until you know them, until you see them, and then you're like, oh, that's what that is. But there's a lot of tools like that, a lot of resources that are in a lot of cities that are then kinesthetic, motion based, that anyone can drop into.
I love
which
that.
is really cool.
Oh, that's very cool. I was going to ask you. So far we've talked about understanding kind of like your environment, like where you perform best, getting rid of any kind of barrier, making it kind of fail safe. What other kind of tips or suggestions would you have for being more consistent, whether that's posting, having those sales conversations, doing the things in your business that that are supposed to be done, but maybe you've been avoiding a little bit?
Yeah. So I'd love to just share a story. I think I was telling you about this before, about the story of the rose. And I think so. There was this monk. He's been meditating for 15 years. And 20 years ago, he went into therapy. He was looking for some support on being more he's introverted, wanted to be more extroverted, living in New York City and more social. And what he wished his therapist had asked him 20 years ago would have been profoundly different if they asked this question. So now, after meditating 15 years, the question was, what is your nature? He wished the therapist had asked, what is my nature? because he's like, if I'm a rose and I was in the desert in Arizona, you've got to like, for me to flower, I'm going to need, build me a greenhouse, get all this soil, bring in watering, all this other things. And then I'll be able to flower. Whereas if I knew I was a rose, then I would say, plant me in a rose garden. And just by sheer nature of being in a rose garden, I'm going to blossom and flower. And so if you look at these, let's call it the type of people who are doing online training and fitness, it's like, what is your nature? And what is the environment that'll help you flower? So I would say, as an ADHDer, you're going to be incredibly stimulated by external environment and internal environment. So it's like, okay, how can you control for those things? So for example, your external environment, like this is like your office setup. Okay. Is it really distracting? Do you work from home? Do you have kids from home? Like, do you have all these things? What is the right environment? And for some, the right environment is working in like a dungeony hole with no windows and like it's short ceilings and like, you know what I mean? So someone needs to be completely closed. And on the other end of the spectrum, they need like incredible amounts of stimulus and light and buzz and people. Yeah. And so find the thing that really works for you for the task that you're trying to accomplish. So that's like, figure out the environment. So that's like the physical space. Like, do you have a space that you can work? Do you have a space that you can drop in to focus and deep work easily? Part of that is eliminating all sorts of distractions. Like, can you, put your phone on airplane mode? Can you, if there's audible stimulus, and this is often overlooked too, but audible stimulus, for some, you need lots of noise. For some, you need no noise. I love this thing called brain.fm. Like if you're trying to get some work in, brain.fm is essentially instrumental music, but you can choose and experiment with the level of neural stimulus. Do you use this? Have you heard of that before?
I do background noise for like monotonous tasks.
Yeah.
Like if it's a focus task, I can't have any noise. But if it's like something I have to do, but it's boring, then I have to have background noise. And then I listen to foreign TV shows because I can't understand it. And Hindi shows are my favorite. There's something about like the way that they speak that my brain just really enjoys.
That's awesome. I
But it's
actually haven't heard that
interesting without
before.
needing to watch.
I'm really glad that you've brought up a new one that I haven't heard of, which is like, yeah, watching shows in different languages. So, okay, the point here is it's like finding the right level of stimulus. Like for me, I hate doing taxes and financial, like I hate doing that stuff. But if I just put on a movie, and the movie has to be very specially curated. It's got to be a movie that like I don't actually have to listen, like watch. It's just like in the background. I typically just watch Hangover Part 1, Part 2, Part 3, like in a series. They're like not important, somewhat humorous. I can pop in at any point, have a chuckle, and I just keep going. But it's like find the thing that works well for that that task. And so experiment. Maybe it's like fast instrumental music. Maybe it's slow. Maybe it's I don't know. Watching friends in a different language. Yeah, anime.
Day to day.
Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing. So that's like from an environmental stimulus, let's call it external environment perspective. There's lots of things. Obviously, we talked about co-working. That's a strategy that really worked. One of the challenges that a lot of ADHDers have is planning their day. So part of the executive functioning challenges is like, okay, can they plan their day? Can they actually show up to the things on their calendar from like a time perspective? So for example, I've got like, this is what I'm using as my to-do list or whatever. Everyone's got a different thing and everyone wants the perfect one. And they think when they, maybe it didn't work for them, that they need to reinvent like a completely new process.
If you have had 30 different planners, you've had washi tape, different gel pens and like fancy markers, and you've done Notion and you've done every app and whatever, you may have ADHD, Jessica.
Okay, I'm going to pull this up. This is so funny that you said that. So in the first study, I kept hearing these things from people that they thought was just like for them. And so I'll actually read these. I call these the dirty little secrets. We all have some.
Okay, hang on. I'm going to do I'm going to do the hand thing.
You want to do it as
put
hands?
a finger down
Okay.
if.
Okay. Now I want to preface this with, this is not for diagnostic purposes. This is just
a laugh.
fully like as a, I heard this so many times from so many people that I started like, when I relayed the findings back to people, I was like, let's take a poll as a fun game. So, okay. I have 8. So start at 0, 0 fingers, and let's see how many you connect with. So I have 8 to-do lists, 5 journals, and endless scrap paper. I have day planners that have pages mostly unused. I'm great at starting, but that middle phase I get stuck. Project management systems that don't get updated. Ding. I could ding you actually. This is great. I've got a. How was that too loud?
I love
Is that
it.
too loud? Okay. When I'm in the zone, I'm unstoppable. When I have time on my hands, God help me.
Yep.
I tried a lot and
Parkinson's
nothing
principle.
has stuck, or not much has stuck. Oh, okay, there we go.
If that bell is not the most ADHD thing ever on a podcast, I don't know.
I know. Yeah, I know. This is like, I bought a bunch for our bikes and I haven't yet. Anyways, I'm in them.
Is it bedazzled?
No, it actually came.
Decorated.
I love that. Where is this? It actually came like that, and I feel like I should color it in.
It makes me so happy.
Yeah, I saw these. It was on Amazon. It came as a 2 or 3 pack. I feel like I have so many jobs. On the outside, I'm crushing it, but on the inside, it doesn't feel like that. I have a million alarms. If people saw my desk, I'd be embarrassed.
Not right now because I just redid my office.
Okay, amazing. I avoid certain things. They're like torture, but when I get started, it's always easier than I think. I can put blinders on and ignore issues until they're too late to ignore. If something is out of sight, it is just out of mind, gone. If something's not on my calendar, it's not even close to happening. Okay, there we go. You got 13 out of 15 if my math is correct.
It's so bad.
Yeah, but so good. So I think what's helpful about hearing these dirty little secrets, like I got to talk to all these people. People think they're on their own. People think oh man, why am I struggling so much with to-do list? Why am I struggling so much with, doing this task that for someone else is like super easy and like honestly it would only take 10 minutes to do. The reality is that there's a lot of people facing the same challenges and just people don't know about these things. It's like behind the walls, behind the scenes. I feel like I'm the guy that sees behind the curtains, behind the Komodo, like basically, and I guess that's what I would want to share with everyone is that whatever challenges you're facing, there's a lot of other people facing those challenges. You're, for people who are in the coaching program that you're in, then trust me, whatever challenges you're facing in that coaching program, there is dozens of other people that are facing the exact same thing.
We tell them that all the time because with the amount of students that I talk to, literally from all over the world, we're in over 100 different countries. It does not matter. Like whatever you feel like you're struggling with, I can guarantee you at least half, if not more, are struggling with the exact same thing, which is comforting because at least you're not like quote unquote broken, right? Like It's not just because you're not smart enough, not motivated enough. It's not that. It's just like we're just human.
And I think that's where this second study was really fascinating because then it was looking at the differences between the ultra successful and the earlier stage. And that's where I think a lot of people would see, okay, there's room for me to grow and develop myself to get to the place where I am in that ultra successful bucket, like that they're working towards. And so I'd love to share some of these 5 core traits that came out in this study here. So, okay, the first one is around goal clarity, which this is going to shift for everyone. But how clear is their goal? So, for example, right now, if your goal is to to build this online practice to a certain degree, to a certain point, well, that's amazing. Get clear on what that goal is. And then where I find the challenges for someone with ADHD, especially for the solopreneur, this is even regardless of ADHD. You might have the vision. I know where I want to go. I want to get to this place, this many clients, this much size. Cool. the executional elements of, okay, well, how do I actually get there from an action plan perspective? So I find a lot of people will say, okay, I have a very clear vision. I know where I want to go. I want to get to this many clients, this much revenue, maybe this much staff. But when I say, okay, what's your plan? How do you get there? What's the most important thing to do? That's where things start to fall apart. And that's not, it's only a problem if you don't know that exists. So it's like, okay, first get clear on your goal and where you want to go. And hopefully you have someone like an Amber that can help on the executional elements of like, okay, and with some coaching or advice, you can get the okay, well, how do I actually get there? What's the steps? Give me the steps, or let me figure out the steps. Because once you have the steps, you can start taking off those actions. So that's the first one, is the goal clarity. The second piece is around having a role that drives results. So would you say a lot of the people listening here, they're more on the solopreneur side of things?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So on the solopreneur side of things, all right, the challenge is wearing all the hats. That is the biggest challenge. So yeah, I'm actually even curious to hear your perspective a bit, Amber, on like, because when you have a full team, you can have people work on the marketing, you can have people doing the sales, you can have. How do you see their role as an earlier stage solopreneur launching their online practice, ideally to get to a place where they're full or overwhelmed with so many clients that they can now bring on other coaches, or maybe do group coaching for some more scalable group program of sort? What do you see as their role? Like, how should they divide their time between what they're doing?
I mean, the very, very early stage for us, it's going to be all about relationship building. Like, if you already have the skill set to do what you want to do, you're a personal trainer, you know how to do that part, and you're just learning to adapt it to a different environment, then it's just going to be, as far as getting clients going, building relationships. We're not the type of people like you have to do hard sales. Like, we're not that type of advice givers, right? Like, we want you to build relationships with people and to put out good work. So like, one of John's phrases is do good work and make sure everyone knows about it. And so, like, if you're doing those things and you're building relationships, everything else for the most part can sit to the wayside. Are there nice things to do? Of course there are. It's just not realistic. And so we have to set proper expectations about what is doable now, and what's the next thing that you want to take on if and when you're ready to take that thing on, because it's simply not possible to give your A+ game to every single thing that you feel like you're supposed to be doing. And the fact is, there's very little that you quote unquote have to do. You just feel like you're supposed to,
Right.
But if you have to lean somewhere, it's build relationships with people and make sure that people know what you do.
Right. I love how you boil that down, right? So then the person's role is to, on one side, make people know what you're doing and that you're doing a great work, and on the other side is be a really great trainer, like help people get the results in what they're working on from a health perspective. Okay, so we got the goal clarity, like how clear are you? Out of 10, rate yourself. The second piece is a role that drives results. Are you in the right role? So we know, sounds like from the solopreneur side in this scale, okay, the two things you need to do is deliver really good service to your clients so that they're getting results, and then share that great work with the world. So you've got two really important hats, and making sure you're spending the time on those things. The third thing is around speed and decision speed. So for some, and this is where we find the ultra successful, very fast decision speed. And this is where things I find on the solopreneur side a little bit more challenging on the decision speed. It's very polarizing. Some are fast, but some are very delayed on taking the next step. And sometimes there's lots of reasons to this. The delay on, let's say, making decisions. So for example, let's say they need to make content. There's all sorts of reasons from an executive functioning standpoint as to why that might be challenging if they haven't done a lot of this before, right? It's like, okay, well, there's a million ways that they can come up with content. There's a million ways they can do it. And so one of the gifts of ADHD is being able to see many ways. and building lots of connections. But then that also becomes challenging to then decide which one, and there could be an overwhelm that happens. So figuring out like, are you someone that is slow on the decision speed or fast? And we want to move towards fast as we move to ultra successful. The fourth one is around taking big actions and big swings. So I think this one would probably be really relevant to your group because, they might, for example, they might get a thought, Joanna I was just talking to this woman and she was talking about wanting some health thing or whatever, her wedding's coming up or whatever, like these different milestones that would be clear. Okay, some training could be really good. So the trainer gets the idea, this would be really good to help Joanna. The question is, do we listen to that intuition? Do we follow that up with a question? Do we follow that up with suggesting, hey, well, I've actually got this program and we've helped these people get like incredibly whatever the promise is. We've helped them lose 15 pounds. We've helped them, feel really good about themselves, feel really great in their wedding dress, whatever it is. So that's the fourth thing is how often are you taking those big actions, those big swings? The ultra successful, I can tell you, are doing it a lot and often, and they listen to that intuition and they'll swing without they don't fear as much. And that takes me to the last. So go ahead.
Let me pause you there because I can tell you for a lot of our people is they have that intuition, but what holds them up is the fear of the reaction. Like if they take the swing, it's not even like if I fail, that part's not so scary. We're used to doing that. Right. We know what that feels like. It sucks, but we move on. But like how someone, if we take a swing for someone and like, hey, mention this thing or try to build a new connection with someone, whatever. And that fear of how that might go other than well. Right. And that holding them back. So how would you help them with that following through? Like they're up to the bat, they're ready to swing, and then they just pause before they actually swing. How would you get them to?
Are they actually swinging, or in the end, are they taking that swing? You think?
No, they're missing it. They're prepped. Their body's ready. They're in position, but they're not actually following it, but they know what to do.
Right. So this is where transparency is something that's really important. And I think for anyone who's in like a coaching program like what you guys are in and have support and whatnot, the problem is that for the solopreneur, no one actually sees what's happening in their business, except for maybe their accountant at the end of the year when they see the numbers. But like no one actually knows if you woke up that day and you did anything on your list. No one knows if you brought in revenue, didn't bring in revenue. Like no one knows, like there's not much transparency. And I think with the ADHDer, what ends up happening is it's very easy to overlook what's happening. There's so many moving parts and so many things that you could look at. But at the end of the day, for people who, let's say they're in a coaching program or whatnot, then I would say create some more transparency, communication or systems around things like this. So for example, right now, what I'm doing with people when they have this issue around taking big actions. So part of it is awareness. Actually, what are the big actions? What are the big swings? What are these intuitive moments? Can we actually list out these ideas? What are they? Can we keep track of them as they come up? Like, okay, you got this big idea. How do we actually put that somewhere so that it actually can get acted upon? Like maybe you're taking a shower. It's not the right time to send a message to someone, right? Or maybe you're, I don't know, you're driving, you're listening to a podcast, and you're like, oh, I want to reach out to that person on the podcast. But you're driving. You legitimately can. So it's like, how can you record for it to be followed up upon? So first is like awareness. Am I actually getting these ideas but not actually taking the swings? Then the second thing is, okay, we know what the swings are. Well, let's create some systems or some boundaries around taking those action swings. This is where I say that body doubling thing we were talking about earlier. So where you find people to do things alongside, that is amazing for two main tasks that is amazing for. One is for boring as hell tasks, like I'm talking about, taxes or whatever, like things that you really don't want to get to. So like this will keep the frame. But the second is actually things that require courage. And so creating the frame. So imagine listing out the things that are intuitive, that are great opportunities, swings, and actually, create time with other people in the program, other friends, other entrepreneurs, whatever, and do the swings together. And doing the swings together is going to make you feel much better. And then also, you're doing it in group. Like I see this all the time. When some people take the swings, inevitably some will miss, and some will hit it and hit it out of the park. And then that becomes inspirational for everybody. Of like, right, don't stop here, because it might take a few swings. It not even might. It will take a few swings to actually connect with the ball and hit it out of the park. So yeah, that once you're actually aware of it, creating some sort of system to enact. And there's something about the frame, creating the frame and structure for those reach outs. So that's part of it. There's obviously more. I do like working with people on building their personal operating playbook. Like, what is their way of taking these things on, and for people to understand what's holding them back. So, for example, one big thing is overly estimating like a negative reaction, as an example. I think what was it? Fear is like false evidence appearing real. So we like feel like, this bad thing is going to happen. And then it creates an emotional response in the body. So actually you remember we were talking about the cycle of ambiguity before, and this is actually a good time to talk about the cycle.
Yeah.
So, so this is great. I was at the ADHD conference in 2023 in the States, and there was this one presenter. It was great. This psychologist that specializes in ADHD, and he runs all his clients through this one framework, the cycle of ambiguity, and he runs them. This is like, it sounded like exclusively, but this is what he does. He just over and over again keeps running the cycle of ambiguity till they have it down pat. And so the way it works.
That's good business. Yeah. I mean, you that's that. So for our listeners, when John talks about like the one nail, right? Like, this is what that looks like in the real world. This is the thing, the cycle of ambiguity. That's that guy's thing.
Right.
But that's what he's known for. So he's the obvious choice when that sort of thing pops up.
Oh, 100%. And I love it. So I think this might be easy if I write it visually. It might be more easy. I'm looking
for. So for our audio listeners, go to YouTube and you can see the
and I'll talk about cycle. It. So I'm just gonna write it here for ambiguous.
Like you're about to do a caricature.
I know. I wish
a picture of me looking goofy.
I know, that'd be great. Okay.
Hysterical.
That would be so funny if I did just draw a caricature of you during this time, and I'm like, oh, this is the cycle of ambiguity. It's Amber with a question mark.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, so for those that are watching, I'm just realizing how bad my writing was there. So starting with something that's ambiguous. So think about something that you've put off. Okay, so you've got this thing that you want to send out, but it's not quite clear. Like, essentially, there's something ambiguous about, there's an opportunity with person X. Okay. But then
like creating an ethical bribe, and then how that whole funnel works.
Right.
As an example.
Okay. Creating. Yeah, right. Even right now, I'm like, oh, that's ambiguous. I don't know enough about, I would have to ask you a bunch of questions to get clear on this, like funnel, whatever. Okay. Creating this funnel, there's a bunch of ambiguity around it. Right. And what happens is you then end up becoming anxious, or some sort of negative feeling. So now I know I need to create this funnel thing, but there's like this feeling around it that's anxious. There's anxiety. And then from that anxiety, it leads to avoidance. That becomes your obvious choice, is actually, you know what? I don't want to feel this anxiety. Best thing for me to do is actually avoid this, put this off, put the blinders on, and focus on other things. Okay. And then
go watch trash TV.
And then the cycle continues because it's still ambiguous what's happening. The results of doing that are ambiguous. The impact, the cost of not doing it is ambiguous. There's all sorts of things that are ambiguous. But mostly what happens once you run yourself through this cycle, like let's say we were in a coaching session right now, and I would ask you, and this is what happens in coaching sessions naturally. You ask the person, hey, what are you struggling with? The person will say, hey, I'm struggling with this funnel thing. Well, now that they've voiced it, it's explicit. It's no longer this gray zone ambiguity. Okay, I'm struggling with the funnel thing. And then you would, as a great coach, you'd ask, well, what about the funnel thing is challenging you? And then they'd start to be like, oh, well, I don't know what to do with this thing or that thing. Should I take this step first or that, or like whatever? And now you start getting clear on exactly what the project is. And if you then got to the like, okay, well, how are you feeling about all of this and whatever, most people won't end up talking there. But let's say we got to the feeling side of it, then we'd understand what's happening in the body. And then the most important thing is, okay, well, what's happening? What are you avoiding? And the avoiding might be like actually building the funnel, like going in and building the thing, or sending the reach out, or whatever. Once someone actually voices those three things, here's what I'm ambiguous about, here's what I'm anxious, here's what I'm feeling towards this, and here's the specific 1, 2, 3 things I've been avoiding. People are smart by nature. Most people, they understand once that's been clearly defined, the answers become clear. Oh, I need to figure out thing A with the funnel. I need to figure out thing B with the funnel. And then I need to actually put this in my calendar to do it. And then I need to do whatever the answers are, they become quite apparent the moment we move from ambiguous to clear. Yeah.
And verbally process, like we've talked about this on the podcast a little bit. I think a lot of people are verbal processors. And so like when they're talking to themselves in their brain about things, it just doesn't work as well. But the opportunity to have someone to talk to voice their thoughts, they usually solve the problem on their own. They just needed an opportunity to verbally process their thoughts.
100%.
Which is why I love
even in the study there, one of the questions I asked is, how much are you a verbal processor? I'd say 95% of people were ranked like 9 or 10 out of 10 for verbal processor as ADHD'ers. So that might be why, you guys probably have a lot of ADHD based clients, because naturally we like talking things out, like the answers come to us as they come out of our mouths. For a lot of us. There was something else I wanted to say around this cycle of ambiguity, but yeah. Oh, what I was going to say is definitely this is why it's great to be in coaching conversations, and also for some that want to try like added support when in between sessions. So something that I do recommend to people is, so ChatGPT has a version you can talk to. And so that's pretty neat. So for those that don't want to process it for themselves when they're on their own processing, let's say through writing or some other method, and let's say they don't, like in a pinch, if you wanted to, you could actually have a talk out loud conversation with ChatGPT. And I would say it's quite good. And I would say probably in another,
it's disturbingly
good. And in like a year or two, it will be like crazy. It'd be like, okay, act as my coach to help me think through whatever I'm struggling with X.
When you feel the need to say please and thank you when you're talking to it, it's done a good job.
Do you feel the need to be that courteous?
Yes.
I think you're Canadian by nature.
Just in case. You never know. Better to be polite just in case. I'm in the South,
That's true. You are in the South. That's amazing that you're pleasing and thanking the ChatGPT.
Even Siri. Thank you, Siri. And then they added the feature where she says you're welcome. I was so excited because I was so bummed I'd say thank you and she wouldn't say anything. And now she does. And I don't, I mean, obviously I'm just joking. They've programmed it that way, but it's fun to think about that maybe she's added it to her.
Okay, so I think everyone needs to now try the thank you. I have never said thank you to Siri. It's like Siri's my slave.
Oh, I do.
And this sounds terrible, but that sounds terrible. But it's like, okay, what I mean is like my daughter who's 2.5. She'll just yell like, "Hey Siri," like almost like with that. "Hey Siri, play Old MacDonald Had a Farm." And yeah, I've never said thank you, and it's such a delight. We should be thinking. I think it's going to completely change the way I communicate the moment I add like some humanity to, because normally it's like, no, I didn't mean to say this. Do play this other thing or
I find it's actually something I incorporate. Like I say thank you for everything, like just for gratitude purposes, to like not get bogged down in life's crap sometimes. And so like literally for everything, parents buy me McDonald's or something, thank you. That was so nice. Like literally for everything.
Yeah.
It's just for that. And so yeah, it just kind of translates to that stuff. But
I love
um
that.
yeah.
That's
So
a big
I
that's a
think
big takeaway
for
for me.
yeah, thank you. Thank you for everything. It's funny because culturally that may show up differently. Like different places may be like, that's really obnoxious. But it works for me. It
I
keeps me
think if
happy.
it's like in like real and not just like made up, like you're actually
Oh
thankful, which
yes.
I
You're
think
actually
you are.
thankful. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I love it. I'm gonna start doing
Yeah.
that more often with my digital whatever I've my Alexas and my Siris and my Googles.
We should do a post. Should you start saying thank you to your
I
attention
think it sends good
GPS?
energy. Like I think being in a
Does, yeah.
grateful nature is makes sense to me.
Absolutely. Well, speaking of, thank you so much for coming. And I think our audience is gonna have like just mind-blowing takeaways from this. Partially be like, oh my God, thank you. I am not the only one who buys like 30 different planners a year and only fills out the first 3 pages because I messed up the second page and now I can't use it. Um, and and obviously the wonderful tips that you shared for helping us stay or get to a place of consistency. So I think this is going to be massively helpful. So thank you so much.
Thank you.